Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Blue Collar DM, the channel dedicated to breaking down barriers for new players and dungeon masters alike. As always, my name is Howard, and today we're going to be covering the Sorcerer class for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. The spellcasting class that draws its power from its ancestral bloodline, or perhaps its innate ability to control the chaos of the magical energies around them. Without further ado, let's get into it! Alright, so we're going to talk about the Sorcerers today. Now, the Sorcerers are really cool. Think you're kind of Doctor Strange or any kind of sorcerer or magic-wielding character that you would think of in any of your kind of fantasy RPG-style movies or games that don't get their magical abilities from studying books or from a deal that they strike with a patron of some sort. They actually just get it from innately having the magical energy within inside them. Now, in order to actually break down this Sorcerer, we're going to change things up a bit. We're actually going to break down the characters from level 1 to level 20, the base Sorcerer. We're also then going to cover the 2 different bloodlines you can get in the player's handbook, which is this book right here. And then we're actually going to come back to the computer and actually break down that first level character sheet. So a little bit different of a change up from what I usually do based on some feedback I got from some Redditors out there who suggested that maybe saving the character sheet till the end for some of the new players so that way they have a good understanding of like what they have to look forward to before they sit down and play the game. And then once they want to get into the nitty-gritty, then we'll cover that sheet. So, and I'll leave timestamps for all these different things down in the description below so that way you can skip around if you need to. And like I said, we're going to cover the Sorcerer from level 1 to 20 right now. So at level 1, now, pardon me, I'm going to have to look at my notes because there is a lot to talk about, but we are going to get spellcasting at level 1, which is kind of different than some of the other classes we've talked about recently, like the Ranger and the Paladin and stuff like that. They get it's a little bit different of a progression, but we are going to get spellcasting at level 1 with our Sorcerer. Now, at level 1, we're going to get 4 cantrips to choose from, and this comes from our spell list. And as we level, we are going to get more, and the Sorcerer table on page 100 in the player's handbook is actually going to describe like what you can get. Cantrips are kind of like your just kind of like offhand magical abilities that you can kind of cast at will that don't really require a whole lot of concentration or a whole lot of effort in order to do them. And then we're also going to get 2 first level spell slots at level 1 that are going to be level 1 spell slots, and this is also going to progress as well. We're going to know 2 spells that we're going to know from our spell list. Now, we don't prepare spells every day like some of the other spellcasting classes. We just know our spells. The spells that we know are the ones that we can cast. We're not going to be able to change those up on a long rest like some of our cleric or other classes usually get to do. We're actually going to be able to change them up at level up, or we're going to get to change them as we gain more levels in our class that allows us to learn more spells. So like I said, we can actually replace 1 spell that we know from our spell list when we level up, but we can't do so otherwise. So when we level up and we pick those spells, we got to be very particular about which ones we're going to take because it's going to impact how we're going to be able to play our character. Charisma is going to be our spellcasting ability, and our spell attack bonus is obviously going to be our proficiency plus our charisma. I say obviously, but this is kind of, if you've watched any of the magic videos, or at least any of the character class breakdown videos that are magic users, this is the same basic equations for everything as far as spell attack bonus and for spell save DC. So we're going to get, it's going to be proficiency plus our charisma modifier because we are a charisma spellcasting class. And then we're also going to get our spell save DC is going to be 8 plus our proficiency plus our charisma modifier. So nothing changes there. We don't have ritual casting, which is an interesting thing to note. And then we can use a spellcasting focus to utilize our spells. So we can use like a crystal or something like that to kind of like channel our spells. And then we're also going to be able to pick our Sorcerer Origin, which is basically our subclass at level 1. Now, I'm not going to get into it now. We're going to save that for later on. There'll be a timestamp down below for both the Draconic Bloodline and the Wild Magic Bloodline, or the Mild Magic Sorcerer subclass. But again, those timestamps are down there if you want to skip ahead. And then at level 2, we're going to get Font of Magic. This, paired with Meta Magic, is going to be the main ability for our Sorcerer, but we don't get Meta Magic until level 3. But for level 2, we get Font of Magic. And basically, what this does is that we get a pool of these points known as sorcery points. And we get 2 at level 2, and this, again, progresses as we level. Page 100, there's a table. Look at it. And we gain all of our sorcery points at the end of a long rest. Now, these points basically allow us to kind of be a little bit more flexible with our casting so we can do different things. So like we could gain more spell slots, or we can sacrifice spell slots to get more points in order to be able to use different skills that we get as we level. So kind of something to keep in mind as we're going forward. We can transform any unused points into spell slots as a bonus action on our turn. Any spell slots that we create with this feature does vanish after a long rest. And a level, like there are different point levels for spell slots. We can only convert points into level 5 spells. It's the highest we can do. But a level 1 spell slot costs 2 points, level 2 costs 3, level 3 costs 5 points, and 4 costs 6 points, and level 5 costs 7 points to convert our points into slots. We can also use a bonus action to expend a spell slot to gain a number of sorcerer points equal to the spell's level, so it progresses. So like if you expend a level 9 spell slot, you'll get 9 points. Makes sense. Now, meta magic is where these points kind of come in. I mean, obviously you can kind of change them so that way you can get more slots if you need them early at the level 2 level, but at level 3 we're going to get a lot of cool abilities. So we're going to get meta magic. So meta magic, we get to pick a different kind of way to affect our spells at level 3, 10, and 17. So we get one meta magic option added to our options as we level. So we get 1 at 3rd level, we'll have 2 at 10th, and 3 at 17. So we get to choose from the different these following options. So we get careful spell, distance spell, empowered spell, extended spell, heightened spell, quickened spell, subtle spell, and twin spell. So we get to pick one of these at each of those little landmarks that we talked about. Careful spell is basically whenever you cast a spell that forces a creature to make a saving throw, we can actually protect some creatures from the full force of the blast. So say if we fire a fireball because we want to hit a lot of people, but say some of our allies are in that blast radius of the fireball and we want to try to save them a little bit, we can actually spend a sorcery point to protect a number of creatures equal to our charisma modifier and actually automatically help them succeed the saving throw, which is going to be really helpful for like our rogue or any of the characters that get evasion when they get in the higher levels, because then they'll just be protected from the blast, period. So that's really cool. Distance spell basically is going to double our spell's range, and we can spend a point in order to use this. If it's a touch spell, if we spend a point, our range is going to be 30 feet. So if we want to be able to fire our fireball even further, or if we want to do something else, we can actually, or basically use a spell that normally wouldn't be able to go very far. Now we can do it from really long range, which is going to be really helpful. But again, kind of, situation specific, basically. Empowered spell is going to basically be if we roll damage for a spell, we can spend a point to re-roll a number of damage dice equal to our charisma modifier. So say if we roll a fireball and like we get 3 1s or something like that, and say our charisma modifier is a +3, we can then re-roll those 3 dice. Now we're going to have to we're forced to take the new result. So it's very, again, situation specific. So just keep that in mind as you're playing. Extended spell is basically when we cast a spell with a duration of 1 minute or more. We can spend a point to double its duration, but the maximum it can be is 24 hours. So if we have a spell that has a duration of 12 hours, it can only go up to 24. If we have a spell duration of a minute, it's going to be 2 minutes. You get the idea. So it can be helpful depending on kind of what situation you're in. If you're in a long combat situation or a social situation where you want to use that, it might be good for you to use there. Heightened spell, this ability, when we cast a spell that forces a saving throw, we can actually spend 3 points to give one target of the spell disadvantage on their first saving throw made against the spell. So basically, if you really want the big bad evil guy to fail his save on something, let's say it's say it's a charm effect or something like that, and we really want the bad guy to be charmed, we can spend 3 points to make it so he has disadvantage on that save, which could be helpful in certain situations depending on how you're playing. Quicken spell, if we have a casting time of 1 action on a spell, we can actually spend 2 points to make it a bonus action. So if we wanted to do 2 damaging spells on one turn, what we could do is we could take, like, say, a fireball, quicken it, and so we can cast that as a bonus action, and then we could cast a cantrip like a firebolt or something like that, again on our turn, which is, depending on the situation, could be very helpful if you need to do a lot of damage in one round. Subtle spell, when we cast a spell, we can spend a point to cast it without somatic or verbal components. So like say if we're in a social situation, we want to charm somebody. So in order to be able to do that, we have to be able to hide that, basically the fact that we're casting the spell, and it may not be easy. So having that ability to kind of hide your hands and not having to cast the incantations with your mouth is going to be really helpful. And then twin spell, if we have a spell that targets one creature that doesn't have a range of self, we can actually spend points equal to the spell's level to target a second creature within range of the same spell. It's 1 point if it's a cantrip, 1 point if it's a level 1, 2 points if it's level 2. You get the idea. To be eligible, though, the spell must be incapable of targeting more than one creature at the spell's current level. So, for example, a Scorching Ray and a Magic Missile aren't eligible, but Ray of Frost and Chromatic Orb are eligible. So, it gives you kind of a good idea on how that works. Now, the next thing we're going to get at, so that was a lot of different options, but again, you can see how those can kind of like change the way your game is going to play and how it's going to feel when you're going as you get more of them. Say at level 3, you take distance spells so you can cast spells that are further away, and then as you get to level 10, maybe you're casting Fireball or some other really big AoE effect spell a lot, so maybe you want Careful Spell. So depending on your game, it'll impact kind of like what meta magic options you pick as you go on. At level 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19, we're going to get ability score improvements. Now, these are going to allow us to add 2 to 1 ability score or 1 to 2 ability scores, which is going to be really helpful. We can boost our charisma modifier. We can get some of these things better so that way, our spells are going to be better at hitting things. Monsters aren't going to be able to save against our spell save as much. There's a lot of different things we can do here. We can also take a feat at these levels. Now, feats are going to be useful because there are certain ones like Warcaster that are going to help us with some of our concentration spells. Depending on, it's again, an optional rule. DMs kind of have the ruling on whether or not you can use them or not. So talk to your DM if you can use feats, but if not, these ability scores are going to be greatly improving your character anyway, regardless. So either option's good here. And then at level 20, we're going to get Sorcerer's Restoration. Say that 5 times fast. At level 20. So we're going to regain 4 expended sorcery points whenever we finish a short rest. So normally it takes a long rest to get them all back, but we're going to be able to get a couple points here and there if we have a short rest at level 20, which is going to be helpful in certain situations. All right, so that was the base Sorcerer from level 1 to 20. So now let's talk about the different bloodlines. So the bloodlines that we get are basically the subclass, and we get to pick these at level 1. Now, in the player's handbook here, we're going to be able to pick from Draconic Bloodline or Wild Magic Sorcerer. There are some others in the Xanathar's Guide to Everything here, but we're not going to talk about those today. We're just going to talk about the PHB ones for now. Now, with Draconic Bloodline, we're actually going to get a Draconic Ancestor. So basically what this means is that we are actually a descendant from a dragon at some point in our bloodline, which is really, really cool. We're going to be able to pick from different kind of Draconic origins. So basically we get to pick from the list of a black, blue, brass, bronze, copper, gold, green, silver, or white dragon. And we're going to have these different types of dragons have their own elemental affinity, and we're going to have that same elemental affinity, which is going to be really cool. Now, when we pick this particular Draconic Bloodline at level 1, we're going to actually also get some different cool abilities. So we're going to get Draconic Resistance, which is basically going to give us an extra point of hit points every single time we level in Sorcerer, which is going to be really helpful. And our armor class is going to be 13 plus our Dexterity modifier when we don't wear armor. So the idea being here is that because of our Draconic Bloodline, we have maybe some scales or something like that in our skin or maybe just a little bit more resilience to damage. So we're going to be able to kind of take and tank more hits than say our normal type of magical casting class could as a base character. We're also going to be able to speak, read, and write Draconic just because of the fact that we have this Draconic ancestry. So makes sense. At level 6, we're going to get Elemental Affinity. So whenever we cast a spell that deals the damage associated with our ancestry, so let's say we picked a red dragon, that would be fire damage. If we picked a green dragon, I believe that would be poison. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure it's poison. But if we cast a spell using that particular ancestry's element, we're actually going to be able to add our charisma fire to the damage roll of a spell, which is going to be really good. We can also spend a sorcery point to gain resistance to that damage type for an hour as well. So very similar to how dragons work. Dragons are resistant to their own element. So makes sense that if we were descended from a red dragon, we could use that sorcery point to then be resistant to fire damage and so on and so forth. At level 14, we're going to get dragon wings. So we're going to get the ability to actually sprout wings out of our back, giving us a flying speed equal to our current speed. Now, these wings can be activated as a bonus action in our turn, and they last until we spend a bonus action, to dismiss them. So the other things to keep in mind here is that we can't manifest these wings if we're wearing armor. So unless the armor can accommodate the wings that we're wearing. So there's very specific situations, like maybe bracers of armored bracers or something like that, you could still sprout the wings. But if we're wearing a full plate armor, we're not going to be able to sprout those wings at all, which makes sense. It's going to be really hard to get the wings through metal. Makes sense. And if we're wearing any clothing, like say if we're wearing a shirt or something like that, there's a pretty good chance that that piece of clothing is going to get destroyed depending on how they sprout out of us. So if you're going to have and use these wings a lot, you may want to maybe have some things custom tailored for your character so they can sprout their wings. And then at level 18, we're going to get Draconic Presence. So basically, we kind of channel the presence of our dragon ancestor. And basically, as an action, we can spend 5 sorcery points to draw on this power, and we can exude an aura of awe or fear to a distance of 60 feet. for 1 minute, or until we lose concentration, which is kind of like which means like concentrating on a spell. And if you have any questions about magic, I will leave a link up here for you guys to check out the magic video. It kind of goes over what concentration is, all the other kind of different effects about magic and how spells work in the game, so good resource there. Each hostile creature must make a wisdom save against your spell save DC. And on a failure, they are charmed or frightened until our aura ends, so again, we get to pick awe or fear, basically. So either they're charmed or they're scared of us, which is helpful. And if they succeed, they're actually going to be immune to this effect for 24 hours. So just keep that in mind as you're playing. It may not necessarily be the most, it can be very useful depending on what you're doing. If you're combat situation, fear can be really helpful. Even charm can be helpful. In social situations, charm can be helpful. So good things to keep in mind here as we're playing our Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer. All right, so let's talk about the Wild Magic Sorcerer. Now, this is one of the craziest origins and kind of the most random character you can play in Dungeons & Dragons. It's very interesting. So basically, with a Wild Magic Sorcerer, we just have this kind of weird innate ability to kind of control the chaos of the magic power around us, which is really cool. At level 1, we're going to get something known as Wild Magic Surge. So once per turn, the DM can have us roll a d20 immediately after we cast a Sorcerer spell of level 1 or higher. And if we roll a 1, then we have to roll on the Wild Magic Surge table. So that's going to be on page 104 in your player's handbook, and it will create a random magical effect. So we're going to actually roll a d100, which is basically, there's those 2 d10 dice that you get in every standard RPG set of dice for your game. There's the 10, and then there's a 10 that has the zeros after it. That's going to be the 2 that you're going to roll together to get a result. So if you have to roll on this table, something's going to happen, and it can be so wild. It actually is so wild that it actually isn't going to be affected by our meta magic. So if it ends up having us cast a spell or something like that, then our meta magic isn't going to be able to impact it, unfortunately. And if the spell that is created by the wild magic normally requires concentration, it's not going to require concentration in this case. And the spell is going to last for its full duration, which is really it's really crazy and interesting. Some examples of the different things that can happen is that we can cast confusion on ourselves, which isn't going to be great. We could turn ourselves into a potted plant. Yeah, like things like that. But we can also get some positive effects, like we could regain hit points, or we could get all of our sorcery points back. There's a lot of different interesting abilities that we can get. So it's very fun. And if you want, again, page 104 in the player's handbook's got a whole list of what can happen, and some of them are really funny and some of them are really scary. So keep that in mind. At level 1, we're also going to get Tides of Chaos. So we're going to be able to manipulate the forces of chance and chaos around us from this magic, from this wild magic channeling, to actually get advantage on an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw. When we do so, we have to finish a long rest before we can regain it. Now, anytime before we regain this feature, the DM can have us roll on the Wild Magic Surge table after we cast the first level spell or higher, and then we'll also regain the use of this Tides of Chaos again. So the more you use Tides of Chaos, the more spells you cast, the more chances you're going to roll on the Wild Magic table, the more random stuff can happen, which is, again, pretty crazy and really fun for your game. Now, at level 6, we're going to get Bend Luck. Whenever a creature we can see makes an attack roll, ability check, or a saving throw, we can use a reaction to spend 2 sorcery points and roll a d4, and then apply that rolled number as a bonus or a penalty of our choice to the creature's roll. We can do this after the creature rolls, but before any of the effects of the roll can occur. So let's say if we're trying to keep one of our allies safe and there's a creature about to attack them and it's pretty close to their AC, we can actually roll that d4 and subtract that number to hopefully make it so they don't hit. Or vice versa. Let's say if we're trying to attack a big monster and it's got a pumped up AC and we're really close to hitting it, we can actually add that d4 that we rolled to our own allies' attack. So, kind of different little cool flexible things that can happen here. And the idea being that because of the chaos around you, you can actually control some of that to kind of bend it to your will and kind of bend the forces of chance to the way that you want it to be. But again, there's a lot of consequences with that, with the Wild Magic Surge. Now at level 14, we're going to get Controlled Chaos, so we will get some control over our Wild Magic. Whenever we roll on the Wild Magic Surge table, we can actually roll twice and then pick whichever one. So let's say if we get a good desirable effect but not a great desirable effect with those 2 rolls, we're actually going to be able to pick which one we want. So obviously we're going to pick the desired one, then depending on your game. So again, Wild Magic Search Table, you got to check it out. It's really funny, the different things that can happen. And then at level 18, we're going to get Spell Bombardment. The harmful energy of our spells is going to intensify. And whenever we roll damage for a spell, and we roll the highest numbers possible on any of the dice, we can actually choose one of those dice and roll it again and add that roll again to more damage. So basically, we're going to be able to do more damage with our spells, provided that we roll really good. And we can use this feature only once per turn. So we're not going to be able to do it a lot, but like say if we throw a fireball and we roll some 6s in there, we can actually take one of those 6s and roll it again. So instead of doing 8d6, we're doing 9d6. You get the idea. We're going to be stronger. We're going to be able to, because we can kind of bend the forces of the chaos and chance to our will, we're going to be able to make stronger effects, which is really cool. All right, so that was basically everything from level 1 to level 20 for the Sorcerer. Now let's go over the computer and we're going to cover that first level character sheet. For you new players who want to get into the game and want to kind of know, you have a good understanding of what the Sorcerer gets. Now let's see how that adds up on the character sheet. All right, so now that we're over here at the computer, we can go over that level 1 character sheet. Now to find your character sheet, what we're going to do is we're actually going to come here to dnd.wizards.com. We're going to go over here to gameplay and we're going to hit character sheets, and then we're going to click this guy. It's going to download a zip file. We're going to open it, and then I picked the 3-pager because we do have a spellcasting class. So something to keep in mind, if you don't need a spellcasting class, you can just pick this form fillable one, and then you can just fill out the first page. But today I need the 3 pages, so that's why I picked that one. So if we come back here, this is Gasper. He is a level 1 sorcerer and he's a human. Now the reason why we picked human, as in this case and in all the other videos that we've done breaking down these classes, character sheets, is I don't want there to be any confusion between what is a race trait and what is a class feature. So humans, they just get +1 to all of their ability scores, which is this area over here. So it just makes our lives easier when it comes to that. Now, and again, they don't get any other weird abilities. So this is what we have here. Now I picked 16 in intelligence, and basically how I figured out these ability scores, I used the standard array, which is the numbers 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8, distributing amongst these ability scores over here, and then we're going to add 1 from our human race, so makes sense. The first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to calculate our hit points. So the way we do that is that we take our hit dice, which for a sorcerer is a d6. So we have 1 d6 at level 1, we have 1 of them. And we're going to add our Constitution modifier to the highest number we could roll on this d6 for a level 1 sorcerer, and that's going to give us 8 hit points. Now, if we were going to level up, what we would do is we'd actually roll that d6 and then add this 2, and then we'd put it in here. So let's say if we roll a 3 the next time when we level up to level 2, we're going to add 2, so that's 5. 5 plus 8 is 13. So makes sense. So now we're going to come down to our proficiencies here. So first thing I'm actually going to put in here is passive percept. No, actually, let's do proficiencies first because it makes a little bit more sense. For weapon proficiencies, we're actually going to get daggers, darts, slings, quarters, staffs, and light crossbows. Now, some of you that have been watching this channel for a while are wondering, why did he skip armor? Well, the reason why is because armor... Let's go on. Oh, come on. Do what I want you to do. For armor, we actually don't get any. We get no armor proficiency with our sorcerer. And then for tools, we get none as well. So, not a whole lot of weapon or tool... Again, no weapon or tool proficiencies, but you're gonna see why. Because the sorcerer, the main thing that it gets is all of its spellcasting ability and the ways that it can manipulate and morph the spellcasting like we talked about before. So we don't really need armor. We don't really need tools. And depending on our sorcerer's origin, armor may not be an issue, but there are spells that we can use to actually boost our armor class. So not to worry, there are different ways we can do that. And if you need any to look at the spell list or anything like that for the sorcerer, you can check out the player's handbook behind me there. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come up here and figure out our saving throw proficiency. So for sorcerers, we're actually going to be proficient in Constitution and Charisma. So we're going to hit that one there, and then we're going to add our proficiency bonus, which is that +2. And that's going to make our Constitution a +4 and our Charisma a +5. So Constitution's a really good one to have as well, especially because we're going to be a spellcasting class. We might have to concentrate on certain spells. And if I haven't already, I should have linked the magic link for the magic video, and why concentration checks exist and why Constitution is going to be important. So that link up there for the magic video is going to help you with that, along with other rules of magic for you guys. And then the next thing we're going to pick is some skills. We get to pick between Arcana, Deception, Insight, Intimidation, Persuasion, and Religion, and we're going to get 2 of them. I chose Arcana and Deception for this guy. You can pick whatever you want. So Arcana now, instead of a 0, is going to be a +2. And the way we know what these numbers are is going to be based on this here. So this is actually the ability score that governs the skill. So if we don't have proficiency, we're not adding our proficiency bonus. But under normal circumstances, this Arcana would be 0. But because we decided to be proficient in it, now we can add this proficiency bonus to it to make a +2. And then Deception is going to be the other one I picked because I want him to be able to lie to people and get away with it. Sure. So that +3 is going to become a +5. There we go. All right, and now for equipment, we're going to come down here. So we're going to get a couple different choices. We can pick a light crossbow and 20 bolts or a simple weapon. I'm going to just pick a light crossbow because light crossbows get to utilize our dexterity modifier for their attack bonus and stats. So it makes sense with our decent dexterity, especially if we're going to run out of spells. We got to have some decent weapon. I'm going to pick the light crossbow. The next thing we get to pick is going to be a component pouch or an arcane focus. Now, component pouches and arcane focus can be kind of used interchangeably. I'm going to pick the arcane focus. So instead of having to worry about having material components, we can actually channel our spells through this particular focus. Now, if it's going to cost money for that material component, we are going to have to buy that. And again, the magic video will describe a bunch of that kind of stuff. But for my arcane focus, I'm going to pick a crystal. So there are lists in the equipment section about what's an arcane focus, what's a druidic focus, etc. You can find that in the player's handbook or online. A lot of these different things you can find online, but I'm just going to pick a crystal and I'm going to put in parentheses, this is my arcane focus. And then we're going to be able to pick between a Dungeoneer's pack and an Explorer's pack. I'm just going to pick the Dungeoneer's pack because, sure, why not? Different ones have different bonuses. The Dungeoneer's pack I like just because it has a couple different extra things to it that the Explorer's pack doesn't have. So that's why I'm picking that one. And then we're also going to get 2 daggers. So easy enough. Now let's figure out our armor class and stuff. Actually, no, let's not do that because there's a couple things I need to do. So level 1, we're going to get spellcasting. So I'm going to put that here. And basically, we're going to get 4 cantrips at level 1. We're also going to get 2 spells known. And we're going to actually get 2 level 1 spell slots. Come on, there we go. And the reason why I need this 3rd page, this one's going to be more kind of like your role-playing page. I'm not going to go over that today because that's going to be specific for every character that you play. So I just want you guys to have an understanding of the mechanics right now. So we're going to skip that page for now. And then we're going to come down to this 3rd page, our spellcasting class. This is basically the whole spellcasting page. Our spellcasting class is going to be Sorcerer 1. Our spellcasting ability is going to be Charisma. Our spell save DC is going to be calculated based on the equation of 8 plus our proficiency bonus plus our spellcasting ability modifier, which for Charisma, for this character, is a +3. So we're going to be taking 8 plus 2 plus 3. We're going to get 13. Spell attack bonus is going to be our proficiency bonus plus our charisma modifier again. So this is going to be a +5. We're not adding the 8th this time. So keep that in mind. So I'm just going to say we get 4 cantrips here. I'm not going to go over which spells I'm going to choose for this character because it's just going to get a little bit confusing. And like I said, you can check out which spells you want to get out of the player's handbook. The standard rules document actually has some, and I'll leave a link for that standard rules document down below. And we're going to get 2 spells known here at level 1. Now, we can change these as we level up. So whenever we gain a level, so say we go from level 1 to level 2, we don't like one of the 2 spells that we know, we can actually change it for one of the spells that we have on our spell list, but we don't, again, prepare spells. So we're only going to know the spells that we know. But we are going to gain more as we level, so again, check that table in the player's handbook. It's going to be really helpful for you. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to have to pick our Sorcerer's Origin. So I'm going to pick the Draconic Bloodline here. We did talk about the Wild Magic Sorcerer too as well, but I'm going to pick the Draconic Bloodline just because it makes it easier for me. I like the Draconic Bloodline. It's fun to play with. There's a lot of cool RP things you can do. You get affinity with dragons. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to pick the Blue Dragon, and that's actually going to give me kind of an electric or... yeah, it's going to give us kind of a lightning, affinity. So basically anything that does lightning damage as we level up is going to be kind of more empowered. It's going to be really interesting. And like we could have picked any of the other dragons, which we talked about earlier in the video. I'll leave a timestamp for when we talked about the different types of dragons we could have picked. And then we could also read and write Draconic. So I'm actually going to come down here, and for languages, every character class for the most part gets common, and which is basically English or whatever common language you're playing your game in, and then Draconic. So we're going to put that there. And then a couple things to keep in mind. So we're going to get Draconic Resilience with this. So if we have Draconic Resilience, which means we're going to get 1 HP per level. So in addition to the 8 that we have up here, if I can get this thing to type out the way I want to. So now instead of 8 HP, we're going to have 9 HP at level 1. So that's, I mean, it doesn't seem like much, but I mean, 9 HP is still decent for our level 1 sorcerer, considering that a lot of other spellcasting classes that use a d6 hit die are going to have less. So something to keep in mind. And then we're also going to get, our skin's going to be covered in scales. So our AC, the reason why I didn't put it in yet, is our AC is going to equal 13 plus our dex modifier, assuming we're not wearing armor. So now we can figure out some of that stuff up here. So if we come up here to armor class, 13 plus our dexterity modifier is going to give us an AC of 15, which is actually really, really good. If you remember our ranger, he only had 14. If we go back a little bit further, there's some other classes that are more martial that have less. So it's going to be really helpful here at level 1 to have a 15 armor class as a spellcaster. So something to keep in mind. Our initiative is going to be a +2, and that again is going to be derived from that dexterity modifier down here. And then our speed is going to be 30 feet because humans move 30 feet. Some character classes like the dwarf and the gnome only move 25, but humans move 30 feet. Excuse me. All right, so now let's figure out our weapon damage. So let's put in the light crossbow here, and our attack bonus for this is going to be a +4, and this is actually going to come from our proficiency bonus, which is up here, plus our dexterity modifier, and that's how we're going to figure that out. Our damage is going to be 1d8 plus 2 piercing. The 2 comes from our attack stat, which is that +2 here. Now I put here 80, 320 because sometimes it's hard for me to remember what the ranges are on some of these things. So a light crossbow has a short range of 80 and a long range of 320 feet. And basically what this means is that anything that we shoot within 80 feet, we're going to roll normally. We're going to roll that d20 and we're going to add that 4 and figure out if we hit. If we're beyond 80 feet but less than 320, we're actually going to roll a disadvantage. So we're going to roll 2 d20s, take the lowest roll, then add our attack bonus, see if we hit. And then we're also going to have the 2 daggers, so I'll put daggers times 2. Barely fits on the screen, but that's okay. It's going to have an attack bonus of +4 because it is a finesse weapon. Finesse weapons actually give you the ability to use your dexterity modifier as opposed to your strength modifier for your attack stats. So that's why we have that there, and that's why it's really beneficial for our guy here. And then this is pretty much going to round up our sorcerer here. So we have everything we need. We have our proficiencies here. We've thrown that all in there. We've got our ability scores. We've got our hit points. Got a pretty good armor class, if I do say so myself. We've got all of our Draconic Bloodline stuff that we get at level 1. And like again, we got to pick our spells. But we also do, before I forget, we do have to pick a background. Now, I'm not going to cover backgrounds here, but we did cover it in a video on the channel. And I'll leave a link up to the character creation video. We had a little bit of kind of a little bit of an overview about backgrounds. I will cover backgrounds sometime in the future, just as a quick general overview and kind of give you some examples, but I haven't done that yet, so keep that in mind. But I will link character creation up here so you guys can have a good understanding of that, because it's going to impact a lot of things. It's going to impact some of our stats here, and it's going to impact some of the things we get, and I don't want you guys to get confused by the background, what does it give you versus what does the class give you, so that's why we did that there. It's also going to impact the way you role play the game, so something to keep in mind. But like I said, this is basically it, and now let's get off the computer and let's talk a little bit more about the Sorcerer. All right, so that was the level 1 character sheet over there on the computer, and that's actually going to conclude our breakdown of the Sorcerer. Now, I know there was a lot of information there. You're going to have some questions, I'm sure, on some mechanic stuff or just some kind of flavor stuff, so make sure you leave a question down here in the comments section. I'll be sure to answer all of those questions for you guys. Also, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell for the channel so you're aware when a new video comes out, because I'm probably going to answer a lot of those questions down there in a future video. Now, I hope you guys learned a lot about Sorcerers today, and until next time, I'll see you all soon.